Hello, my name is Daryl and welcome to the Sprinter Van Build series. Today we are going to be covering the kitchen area. If you didn't see my last video, I highly recommend that you take a look at it because it's really talking about the 80/20 product and how the connectors and everything goes together. And I'm not going to be covering that in this chapter. So let's get going. So in this chapter, as I said, we're going to be covering this kitchen. This is the primary area, and you can see my mouse, the isotherm refrigerator. We got 2 drawers, cabinets on the bottom. We're going to be talking about the upper cabinets. The plumbing section we're going to cover in the next chapter, but over here we're going to be covering my bench seat. This is where the water tank is. We have 2 drawers, and under here we've got our water pump, our water filter, our hydronic diesel boiler, and the heat exchanger for instant hot water. And then we're going to be talking about the upper cabinets is here as well. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this cabinet here. And in here, we've got to talk about how we are going to work with the sink and the plumbing. So the first thing that I did was I built the frame based on what I thought my dimensions were going to be for my refrigerator and sink. And even on my sink, when I'm putting my van together, I had visualized what I wanted. I knew what sink I wanted. I knew what drain and how I was going to connect it. And really, the depth here is, as you can see, there are no extensions here. So I knew that my cabinet or my frame had to be exactly at this point to minimize my space. And I wanted to maximize my drawer space and minimize this. So all this stuff had to be laid out ahead of time. I knew what counter I was going to put in to calculate how high my sink was going to be sitting on top. So these are all parts of what we had to do. And even down here, you can see in this photo, the drawer guide for the bottom is shorter on the bottom piece because it would hit the pipe. They drilled through the floor compared to the upper one that can go all the way to the back wall. So these are things that you got to account for when you're building. So here all I have is my work table on how I was putting my 80/20, and these are all my different fittings and connectors that we did. And again, you definitely need your square and your tape and your pencils to figure all this stuff out. But as I mentioned, I had everything laid out in my head. So I had here cut all my aluminum 80/20, marked it all with pencils, and was starting to drill my holes and tap the holes that I needed. The other thing that I had to do, as I mentioned before, is you want to plan for how you're going to put your connectors in so that you put your T-nuts in here. And these 6 angle brackets are really for bolting the side panel onto this aluminum frame structure. And then all here on the bottom, I have one here. And then this is the plate that I was going to be bolting this to the floor as well as the back wall of the van. And again, here, this one up here is for the countertop. So the countertop is going to screw it. So you got to put all this stuff in the framing ahead of time. And then these holes here will drill through so that when I get my cross member going across, that's how it's going to come together. So just a lot of planning. Everything's out of the aluminum. So I didn't want anything that was weak. I wanted it all super strong. And again, the same thing here that we talked about. As I said, and you'll need to look at this in a previous video, on these cross members, these have to be tapped because we're putting a special anchor in here that is described in a previous video. But all this stuff, it literally takes 10 seconds to tap these holes with the right tools. And then here you see that we start having our drawer guides, put all that in. As you here you can see everything is laid out in terms of where I'm going to drill. And this is just a dry fit right now before I drill all my holes into my frames. Then once I drill it, it's easy to assemble. This goes through, that pulls this in with this end fastener, and it just super snug and the thing does not move at all. So once all that's done, this is what my frame will look like. again, I still have to put my drawer guides in here from my upper drawer. But here, this is all pretty much laid out. I have my wire roughed in for a 110 outlet that's underneath the sink. Why I put it there, I have no idea. I just wanted one. And then the other wire is the wire in the fridge. The other thing that I did is behind my frames, I put this adhesive foam tape on the back. And really for soundproofing, I just didn't want any vibration of the cabinet against the outside wall. So this went on the lower cabinet, all the cabinets that touch either the ceiling or the wall surface. As you can see on the floor, this plate here is going to be slid down into this track, but this here is the bolt that is going to bolt it into where a seat could go, or into a floor, into the flange of the actual van floor. So this cabinet is bolted to the frame of the truck. And then you can see when I slide in my my refrigerator here, the other thing that I did is I didn't want any vibration at all, even on my refrigerator. So I put in I still had a 1/2-inch PVC board that I was able to slide in there just to make it even more snug. The other thing that I did before, and we talked in this in previous videos, and we'll talk about the plumbing, I think, in the next chapter or the chapter after. This is my hot and cold water that's going to be running to the bathroom, this is the bathroom wall here, as well as the kitchen sink. But this runs under the subfloor, does not go underneath outside the van, but yet is inside the van. So the next thing we're going to talk about now is the upper cabinets. These are the upper cabinets above the main kitchen area. Just to talk about, this is the 80/20. The bottom of these cabinets are actually vinyl clad aluminum that I also got from Harbor Sales, the same material that I got all my wall panels from. And I'll talk about, the balsa wood, plywood door fronts that I have in the side panels. But the reason I went with the aluminum is I wanted something super strong, something lightweight. And the other thing that I did is I siliconed all the way around here to minimize the vibration on these, and it looks super clean as well. So let's get into this. So my upper cabinets are really basic. And the reason is, number one, I have a finished ceiling. I have a finished back wall. So I don't need anything other than an L bracket. So let's talk about what we did there. So you can see here, simple L frame bolted to the ceiling, bolted to the wall. My electrical wiring's going through here, and we'll get into that in the electrical section, but we ran a electrical raceway through that. But if you remember, we talked in the previous videos about ceiling preparation. My ceiling cabinets are actually bolted into the main frame of the roof of the truck. And we do that through these toggle bolts that we discussed before. And then there are these studs that we run in them. So I knew where all my holes were, and I had everything pre-drilled in the ceiling. So when I put the ceiling up there, I knew where it would be. And because I'm using the 80/20 system, it's a track system, I can slide my angle bracket back and forth on the track to line up with that bolt that's coming out of the ceiling. I just needed to make sure that I measured my cabinet the right way, my L cabinet. So once we did that, as I mentioned, the stud is coming through the sidewall, the stud is coming through the ceiling. And then all I did is, I mentioned, I just cut these aluminum angle iron, and I actually found this was a lot easier because it was off-centered. And then this slides back and forth, and I just line it up with this bolt. I put it in, and I screw them down and tighten it up. And then on the ceiling, I did the same thing. So the stud comes down, this adjusts back and forth on the track, and then this just screws up in there, and away you go. And all this has that foam padding on it as well. And then you just snug this down and you tighten it up. And it's a super easy way to install it, just a little bit of planning. And then that's what I did for this side. And then when we did this side, when I did the ceiling as well, you'll see here's all the studs that are in the ceiling. And over here, these are all the T-nuts, or not the T-nuts. If you guys remember, I mentioned those rivet nuts that went into the side panel of the van. All this gets bolted to the frame of the truck. So I don't have anything screwed into wood. It's the frame of the truck, and they're just super secure. In this frame, I pushed in the T-nuts into the T-channel, and then I took the hinge and just used 1032 screws, and I screwed them right into the nut, and then that's how it affixed on that. And the great thing about this is this whole thing can slide back and forth, so it's super easy to adjust. And then all we did is we have the hinge. And then I also did the same thing for the hydraulic closures on it. It's also nutted. I have the 1032nd T-nuts in the side, and these just bolted into there. And then we just screwed it into the top. And we'll get into the, and here, this is just a standard push-pull knob. That's the locking knob, and I'll put all this in the description below on what we did. I'm going through this really quickly just to give you a high-level overview, but if there's any questions, just put them in the comment sections and I'll try to get back to you on it. The other thing is we have two end panels. So remember, this is a split screen here. Over the behind the driver's side panel, I have my electrical system here, and I'll get into that in the electrical system. And then there's a panel that goes over top of that. That's a magnetic latch. But this is my Rixson hydronic heating system. So this is for my hot water heater, my boiler, my fan, high-low, my thermostat, and this is the other switch to turn the system on. But even with this, all I did was I cut these on an angle, put end caps on them, and then with the angle brackets inside the cabinets, I just screwed those right into this, and that just gave me my finished cabinet look. The next thing we're going to talk about is the base cabinets. The base cabinet is, as I mentioned before, under the bench seat, I have a 22-gallon water tank, 110 two outlets going back to my inverter. This bench seat lifts up. It's my wife's pattern, not mine. I wasn't a fan of this color, so please don't make any negative comments. You can see my Laguna table thing there. On the bottom, this is my hydronic heater. So this is the blower motor. This opens up and you can direction it any way you want. Then also under here, we have our water pump, water filter, but we'll get into all this in the plumbing section. The other thing that I did is these cabinet these pulls were not on here originally. These are the original push-pull. So these you push-pull and then it locks it and you pull it out. I found that it was a little bit more difficult for my wife to open those with that knob. So these still lock the cabinets, the drawers closed, but this thing's just on this little hinge and it pulls up, and then you can just make it that much easier to open up. So here we go with the frames again. This is all laying this stuff out. I knew what size water tank I was going to have. Had a rough wire in my electrical here. My plumbing was going through both sides here, trying to optimize my space. This bar here is to bolt it also into the frame of the truck. Okay, and we're also bolting it into the back of the frame here. Okay. And then this is just another view of it. The other thing that I did is this is not DOT approved. I don't think anybody can put a side seat in a vehicle. I think it's almost like driving in a limousine where you don't have any shoulder restraints, but I did want to put in seat belts and I bolted those into the frame of the 80/20 frame, which is a 1x3 aluminum structure. And you can see here, this gets bolted into the frame of the truck. So this thing is pretty solid as well. Okay. Just another picture of that. So before I really figured out where my drawer placement was going to go, I needed to just get my rough framing in first. And then from there, I'm trying to figure out how to put the Rixson Comfort Cool system in here. This is the hydronic glycol tank that circulates back and forth to the boiler, which is under the driver's side seat of the van, and it's connected to my diesel tank. And then this is a coil, very similar to that's in your car, with a blower fan on it that the hot air goes through. So we'll get into all this in the plumbing section, but the most important thing is trying to figure out how to lay everything out. I didn't have a plan originally. This here is my heat exchanger for my instant hot water heater. This is not my final layout, but I was just trying to get an understanding of how you would do it, because you sure can't plan this stuff ahead of time. And then once I knew where all that was at, then I could start putting in my drawer glides. And the other thing that I wanted to do here is I did want to put a 3/4 inch plywood base that was separating my heating area, because it was going to be warmer down here as compared to up here. Okay. So I just put that 3/4 inch plywood base down first. So as I said, this was the Rixson system. And in the end, this was my end configuration. We're going to get that in another section. But you can see I took my my heat exchanger and I turned it on at a different angle. And I'll get into all what this piping is here later on. But this is underneath that cabinet. So with the drawers, all my drawers were custom made. It is so inexpensive to do this. And the last thing that I wanted to do was buy a box drawer and then build the cabinet to the drawer. Once my cabinets were built, I knew exactly how to measure it because they give you the directions. And then you give the size and dimensions to this company, and I'll put a link in the description. And then they make your drawers for you. The great thing about it is everything is shipped flat. So all you've got to do is, I used Gorilla Glue, the tongue and groove section here, and you glue it up really nice, you pound it down, you clamp the thing square, and you're done. Then I ended up sanding all this down once it was all dried, and then I was able to put my cabinets, all my drawers into place. And here I was just showing you another picture of this drawer glide. But these are the drawers all put into place, and I'll put a link in the description. So you can see everything is coming together. All my frames are in, the upper cabinets are in, this countertop is in. I still have to put this, my sink is in. And then the next thing we're going to start doing is putting the side panels on. So how did we do that? I got all my plywood from Harbor Sales down in Maryland. It's a sign company that sells wholesale materials to all these sign shops out there, as well as, anybody that wants wood or PVC or things like that. And the other great thing about this company is they cut everything to size if you want it very inexpensively. Have this application, you put all your dimensions. And a great thing that I did is I chose balsa plywood. So this is super light plywood. They cut everything to size. Then all I needed to do was to put my contact cement down. I rolled it out, 2 coats on that, 2 coats on the top. You let it dry, you put it down, you rubber roll it. And then all I did was I took my trim router bit, and I trimmed the sides, and then I finished off the edges. Once I did that, as I said before, I had all my angle brackets in my frame. So then all I'm doing is quickly screwing this into my wood panels. And later on, if I decide that I want to change out and update my wood panels in my van, it's going to take me nothing to do. Everything is so simple. All I'd have to do is take the panels off, get all the measurements, send it back to Harbor Sales. They'd come back, or I can just have a company make all the panels for me and have it with whether I wanted Formica or wood or paint or whatever I wanted. But the whole thing is to make this thing adaptable in the future and very easy for you to maintain it going forward. Then on the bench seat, here, this is where I ran my electrical. Now I put the countertop in. We're starting to put the panels in. And here you can see that previous panel that I showed you that we were making. This is where the water tank is. And we have all the brackets that it's going to screw into those. The other thing that I did is before I put my countertops down, I also put another foam padding strip in. And you can see here's the finished edges that I put on the cabinets. I did something a little bit different on the doors, the drawer fronts and the doors to the upper cabinets. And then you can see here, I just screwed all these into these panels, and that's how it got all attached. And then this from underneath, I would take the drawers out and screw from the bottom up into my countertop. And then this is my finished product. So you see the end panels. These are my door panels, my drawer fronts. So just to summarize, what we went over today was really what did we do with the aluminum frames, how we built the frames, what we did with the drawer glides, the planning for everything, how we mounted the cabinets into the floor, into the frame of the truck, a van, how we built the upper cabinets with the L-base frames, how we mounted the drawer fronts, the side panels, and then we went over also on this side as well what we did in terms of dry fitting, how we were going to put the heating system. I wasn't going to get into the plumbing on this section. That's in another video. If you have any questions, comments, please list them below. I'm going to try to link in most of the products that I use in this build just to give you, if you have any ideas, you want to get references, you want to buy it, whatever. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video. Take care. Thanks.